The few of us who are here, raise your hands. Almighty Father in heaven, the great and holy one whose name is Yahweh, this is your servant, Kahan Gedali Hawkins, see the last witness, Kahan Yisrayl Hawkins, approaching your throne by the authority of Yeshua Messiah, High Priest over the House of Yahweh and soon coming King of Kings and Ruler of Rulers. And Father, I come before you here, Father, with these men standing before you, raising our hands, Father, giving you praises and honor and glory, and thanking you so much, Father, for the understanding which you have brought us all to understand, and thank you for the way that you inspire us, Father, and lead and guide us in all things. We do love you, Father, and we do pray and ask it all in Yahshua Messiah's name. Hallelujah. Yahweh. Okay, be seated. Okay, we're on page 272 in the 9th book of Israel, part 2. Okay, in case you have your book, you'd like to follow along with us. And I'll read the title for you. It says, chapter 27 says, teachers of Babylon who threatened to kill Jeremiah for speaking the laws of Yahweh are now called Catholic, who came from the Holy Roman Empire. The Nimrod system is what we see in all the schools of higher learning, merchandising, oppression, and the end is devouring fire. I have a little outline here. Let's go over the outline before we get into the book. The first thing brought forth says that Yahweh carefully watched over the breeding program. See? Because we are Yahweh's breeding program, right? And He has always, from before the very beginning, whatever that was, in Yahweh's time, that goes way, way back, He always watched carefully over that breeding program. It's like a farmer who has prized bulls or prized even dogs or prized other type of animal. He takes very care, and he's very meticulous in taking care of those animals. Okay? And we are part of Yahweh's breeding program. And it's the same way Yahweh is very, very carefully watching over us. So it's really nice to know that we have somebody looking out for us, right? Now, Abelin is on trial now. They need to repent. She's been brought forth by Pastor. We've had sermons on this, and it's been in the newspapers. So I'm sure they're all aware of these words of Pastor, that they are on trial now. But I can imagine the attitude that's out there. Oh, we on trial? I wasn't in jail. He was. That type of attitude. But the day is coming very, very, very quickly. The next point here is that the Institute of Higher Learning was set up to reject Yahweh. Isn't that something? The Institute of Yahweh. If it wasn't because the House of Yahweh and Pastor, his teachings, this concept would never even enter my mind. That the Institute of Higher Learning was set up to reject Yahweh. And sure enough, in every area you go, people, they don't realize that they're rejecting Yahweh, but that's exactly in their systems, in their laws, in their procedures, and everything. And they would think you crazy if you were to mention something like this. What do you mean? We reject Yahweh. Okay, and now the next point would be, we will not have honor unless we prove ourselves to Yahweh. You see, Yahweh's kingdom is not one of these fly-by-night organizations. You know, Yahweh, the kingdom that He's building is such an awesome kingdom. I think our minds fully cannot contain it at this point. But the more you think about being in Yahweh's kingdom, the more you should come and pray about to realize that we have to prove ourselves to Yahweh. Yahweh doesn't look at us and say, "Oh yeah, I like the way you're a cool guy. You know, come on over, you be part of my kingdom." Not the way it goes. That's why that figure 3 out of 4, okay, atthe 13 talks about that, because Yahweh, as part of His plan, He has to be sure. He has to be surer than sure before He would let anybody into His kingdom. Because, brethren, look at it. This thing is forever. Forever what? Forever ruling and leading the universe. You know how awesome that is? I try to think about that sometimes, many times, but you know, you never get to the real true thinking of it, because it's so awesome, I'm saying. So we will not have honor unless we prove ourselves to Yahweh. Honor. Now think about that word, honor. To have honor in the eyes of Yahweh, what that means. You know, check it out sometime. Do a little studying it sometimes. And we are all from one blood. We're all blood brothers. Like the Indians say, become blood brothers. We're all from one blood. And we understand how that was achieved, of course. Okay? So just to give you some high points to think about those things. War and peace. Oh, this is pretty great. Barack Obama, in his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, President Obama said that Iran would not be allowed to game the system. Game, you know what gaming means? Like when you try to smart and play somebody for a fool or whatever. That's what it means when he says, that's what I gather he means when he says to game the system. In other words, fool the system. The nations like Iran and North Korea do not game the system. Those who claim to respect international law cannot avert their eyes when those laws are flouted. Those who care for their own security cannot ignore the danger of an arms race in the Middle East or Asia. Those who seek peace cannot stand idly by as nations arm themselves for nuclear war. No? Think about it. They're all out there arming themselves with these nuclear weapons. Yeah? Excuse me. And I wonder how many of them have stopped and really thought about what they're doing. See, those who seek peace cannot stand idly by as nations arm themselves for nuclear war. They can't do that. Now they show what the United States has, and they said, we're big enough to stop this, he says. Does Iran have some 720 military bases on every continent? Well, the United States does. Is Iran spending $57 million per minute? Man, $57 million per minute. No, but the United States is. If you see this is a money game, and you've got to remember now, this is a setup because this comes from the school of higher learning. This is what started with this family that Yahweh brought out of Egypt, Abraham's lineage. Yahweh uses his family, and he's going to let this game, as it is called, play itself out. And praise Yahweh, we're not going to be on the losing end of this game, okay? Because they're going to make a fools of themselves, and just, oh boy, when that day comes. So, and I'm surprised they called it that, but maybe he understands more than I thought he did about the scriptures. In 2006, the American nuclear arsenal stood at roughly 18 million kilotons. Kilo is 1,000, tons is a what? Another 1,000. I mean, in terms of zeros. Okay, so 100. Boy, I'm not sure if I have this right. 18. It looks like 18 trillion tons. That's what it looks like. Anyway, it's a lot of explosive power. Okay, okay. You could blow this world and a large part of the rest of it to pieces, if they were allowed to. An additional assortment of 165,000 megatons of incomprehensible destruction. Of incomprehensible destruction. Wow. And that's exactly what the scripture said. We were going to find in this, that's what it said we're going to find in this time. Something else we're going to find in this time period is hunger that is slowly spreading throughout the world. Now, I don't know if you've been listening to Al Jazeera, for instance, and the other channels about the situations in this world. The people are literally starving. They even show you. They show when the people are falling down, they can't stand up anymore. And it's just a funny thing is that they somehow have the food, but they have problems delivering it. I mean, I don't understand these things that's going on. But anyway, the people there are literally starving. You turn your TV, you have a TV, try to get Al Jazeera or one of those other news channels, and you see this. Men, old men, women, children, babies. And they're dying by the millions. Something else we're going to find in this time period is hunger, and it's slowly spreading throughout the world. Hungry families, homelessness, on the rise in U.S. cities. Hunger is spreading like the number of homeless families is increasing. Cities reported a 26% jump in demand for hunger assistance over the past year. That's the food stamps, and we're running out of food stamps. It's getting to where there are not enough funds or not enough food in the food banks, and the people are not going hungry, and the people are going hungry rather. And of course, when this takes place, it's always brought revolutions, and this is what we're afraid of. And this is what, I think you're on the brink of some fighting over food, over the conditions in this world, the way people are being treated. Well, we have a new disease on the market. It's called Q fever. Organisms are excreted in milk, urine, feces, and infected animals. Most importantly, During birthing, the organisms are shed in high numbers within the fluids and the placenta. The organisms are resistant to heat, drying, and many common disinfectants. These features enable the bacteria to survive for long periods in the environment. Or you might put firmament there, and you'll understand more about why we have a global warming, and we're adding another one to the list now, to kill the protective barrier that Yahweh put around the earth, called the firmament. We translated firmament from the Hebrew word. Okay? And I'm not sure if many people are aware of this, of the firmament. Probably, I think some now are beginning to learn of it because pastors been preaching it on the internet, the worldwide television that we have. Okay, and people are getting educated. It says infection of humans usually occurs by inhalation of these organisms from air that contains airborne barnyard dust contaminated by dried placental materials. Look, birth fluids and excreta of infected herd animals. Humans are very susceptible to disease, and very few organisms may be required to cause infections. Now, that's not the only new God they're new to come up with. The Netherlands slaughter more animals. The Netherlands stepped up measures. You may have heard about this. About a month ago or a month and a half ago, we brought it out. The Netherlands stopped up measures on Wednesday against the world's biggest Q fever epidemic that has killed 10 humans. Let's see. The Ministry of Agriculture announced a preventative slaughter of 34,000 expectant goats, ewes, and 12,000 billy goats, because this is contained in the billy's sperm. Ah, boy. Here's another one. Mad cow disease. We got a new form now of mad cow disease. This thing is mutating like AIDS and spreading, and they're saying more people have got it than first thought. FEMA encourages individuals to resolve to be ready. They're telling you to get ready for the disasters that are coming, and you can help them. They say, by getting your family ready, it won't be long before you won't be able to get ready. And what they're doing here, of course, they're trying to get the people to start thinking ahead, because they know these things are going to take place, and they don't want riots on their hands when they take place. Riots. Yeah, that's the answer to it. Man gets upset and frustrated. They riot. That's the only outlet they have. Let's see. STD screening could start early. This article is very sickening. They found the most participants in fornication start, some of them as low as 8 years old, and getting these diseases. The most of it picks up from around 13 years old. This is so sad that we have got to do this. That we have got this, rather. Especially when we got laws that Yahweh gave us that would have prevented it, but it's still there. You see, Yahweh created all the laws He created is to prevent us from this situation. But what does man do with Yahweh's laws? They take it and they toss it over in the corner. That's not for me. Yeah. Let's see. I think that's all that I wanted to show of these articles right now. because you've got to tie this in. Every bit of this stuff that I just brought you here, you've got to tie in with the kings of the East and this family that Yahweh purposefully bred. We watched the breeding program and then allowed it to go out into the world, showing what can take place. Of course, these are things that he has faced and worked with now for probably billions of years, and has seen it go steadily worse among the gods and the God-led planets in the universe. See, so we're not so we were in a boat all by ourselves. No, we're not. Yahweh gone ahead of us for so many years, and the things that we see now are things that has been occurring for millions and billions of years out there in the universe. But Abelin, of course, is on trial right now with Yahweh. I don't know how many people will come out of this system. I don't know how many will turn and repent. I would that they all would. Praise Yahweh. I hate to see the condition of Abelin, a city named after the first righteous priest who actually taught laws to prevent what we're seeing here. Abel gave us laws that would have prevented everything that's taken place, and people would have lived in peace, true peace. All right? But that's why we're here. That's why pastors here, all the way up to Yahweh, working through us to bring back this peace to the universe. That's going to be really, really great, won't it? I can't wait, but I have to. Let's read it. Okay. We have to prove ourselves for this kingdom. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a kingdom that would work forever. So he made us in this manner to where we would actually desire to go the other way. He made our minds, though we could use similitudes and could actually make up our mind to follow this way, the righteous path. And that's the way we were made. But everybody must overcome, and we must prove to heaven and earth that we're going to rule as Yahweh. I think it's such a great feeling, when we have a Creator who has all these things planned out for us, and He has chosen us to be the forerunner of that plan. You know what the forerunner is? Who the forerunners are? The ones who are first out there. The ones who are the very first to live this righteous way. And I tell you, I'm so joyful to be a part of this work, to be a part of this plan. I seek for words. The words can't even come to my voice to say the things I'd like to say. Otherwise, we won't have any authority in the kingdom if it comes easy. We have to fight for it. We wouldn't have any authority. We wouldn't be honored among the universe. Honored. Write that word down and look it up when you go home. Honored. What does it mean to be honored? It's a great thing to be honored. I don't have a dictionary here now, but I know the word. It means it's high there in the meaning, and honored. The beings honored in the universe. The beings in the universe. We would not have that honor if we didn't prove ourselves to Yahweh. See, this is a proving ground. This is not a party. Okay? A proving ground. See? And we're being tested. And what Yahweh is doing, He's not testing us to be mean to us. No, He's testing us to prove us. See? So every day, brethren, when we get up, we should add that in our mind that we are here to prove ourselves. See, that proving comes from the mind, from the heart, working together. And if you don't have your mind or your heart in it, you won't make it. So let me just read a little here. We only got 4 or 5 minutes to go. Let's read something from this. And this is what President Obama's together. This is what President Obama, whether he knew it or not, he's bragging about this right here. He's bragging about what we have become. What we have become is going to kill us. What we have brought forth here, and this is what Yahweh is showing us here in this chapter, is violence that the world fears, of course. But you can't control people with fear. You can control people by being servants to them, and everyone serving them is serving one another. A man would be a fool to step out of such a lovely situation as service to another and become violent like this. But they can't see this right now. They can't see what it's even coming to. Excuse me. Let me not enter their counsel. This is verse 6, so I don't know what chapter, but it's in the book here. Meaning they have counsel, and if you look this up, it means schools of higher learning. This is where it came from, and there are, I don't know how many hundreds of scriptures showing this. I could spend months covering just the scriptures that this refers to right here. This council, these schools that are set up throughout the whole world, mentioned by Daniel as devouring the whole world. See, so let your mind go out there now. It's not something that's occurring here, or occurring in Texas, or occurring in the U.S. It's occurring in all the world. You see, and everybody's deceived into falling for it. Let my glory not be joined to the assembly, which means they have assemblies. Now, this is talking about religions that these people right here, these two brothers right here, are going to bring forth throughout the world. For in anger they killed a man. Yes, how many times is this taking place daily now? Even school shootings in anger, and they go and kill teachers and the students until somebody shoots them down, or they turn the gun on themselves. And for their pleasure, with much pleasure. And the example that you see, if you've read it yet in Genesis 34, Genesis 33, 34 and 35, of these two men, and what they did to a prince and his family and the tribe, if you could read that and not get sick at your stomach as to what this man or what these two brothers did, and the confederacy they had already been formed, probably in Egypt, before they came out. But they used this against their brothers, and they wanted something, and when they wanted something, they went and took it. They just took it. So Yahweh, instead of allowing this tribe to grow and take over the earth and just control it with fear and greed and killing, He scattered these among the tribes. And this is what was prophesied here, right here, that He would scatter them among the tribes. In verse 7 it says, "Cursed be their anger, so fierce, yes, you see it, bits and pieces and genes, but He wants you to see it throughout the whole world also. And this their fury, they're so cruel," He says. And of course, they do this. They display this in wars, and I'm sad to say that if we saw it in Guantanamo Bay, and everybody should have seen that, what was taking place, anyone who has television sets, it was shown that these are men, what their characteristics were that of Yahweh, says is coming down to this earth in the end. For in the last days, as Genesis 49:1 says, a prophecy that was given by a great prophet there, speaking to the lineage that he said was going to rule the world or possess the earth. Yes, my relief is here. Okay, we'll end with that, and we'll like to turn the podium over to Brother Khan Stefania Hawkins. Here's yours.
Shalom, everyone. Please be seated. We're going to continue speaking about the Genesis 49 1 and that whole chapter, basically, which is about this last generation that we're living in, and who's really controlling it, and what they're doing, and the character of them, and what their ultimate end is going to be. So we're going to start on page 278 of the ninth book of Israel, part 2. I believe it's part 2, the chosen branch. Now, Pastor starts off by saying here in Isaiah 14, so you might as well turn over to Isaiah 14. We're going to spend a little time there. Isaiah 14. Now remember what we saw and what I've just explained to you in the prophecy there in Genesis 49 concerning the family and these two tribes and their character. Their character, their evil, cruel, ruthless character that are the teachers of America. Okay, and that's basically us, what we came out of, and what we're, of course, changing. We're not going to remain this way, and most of us are anything but this. But as we come into the house, we're converted from this character, and these are the people who now lead the world and are about to lead it into global nuclear war. Now let's skip down to verse 50. The evil mess that you see, and that's what you see in Abelin. Throughout Abelin right now, you see violence taking place, shootings taking place, robbery, stealing, burglaries of all kinds. The police are swamped with calls. And you see this in, I try to read the Abelin newspapers almost every day just to see what's going on. And when I first moved here, it wasn't like this. This violence has escalated, I think, about 3 or 4 times what it used to be 10 or 15 years ago. And the other day, even in the Abelin Mall, and malls used to be safe places or considered somewhat safe places, it says here, this was from September 14, 2011, this is the 24th, 2 women reportedly were sexually assaulted in the west parking lot of the Mall of Abelin on successive Mondays, prompting an undercover operation by Abelin Police Department. The nighttime attacks allegedly were August 29th and September 5th, and no arrests were made. And this is someone just coming out of one of these big clothing department stores. These women, they go in and out of these stores by themselves, and someone was waiting in the parking lot and took them into their cars and raped them. And the police didn't report this. and they didn't report it to the people that worked there either, which got them upset because there was a serial rapist out there apparently, and they didn't know, and they were going back and forth to their cars. But if you notice that the story's title is 2 women allegedly raped at Abelin Mall in recent weeks. And, a lot of this has to do with lack of general education. These people that are coming out of these schools of higher learning don't really even know how to write. They don't really know how to read. They don't know what words mean. But you don't say 2 women allegedly raped. They said they were raped. They were raped. You would use the word allegedly when you were talking about the person who they think did it. Okay, this is where you'd use the word allegedly. But it's gotten to the point with these cities now where even the crime rate has become something worth lying about. Because as the crime rate in Abelin goes up, the tourism goes down. If there's rapes going on in the mall, the tax revenues go down. And so there's now this new mindset to lie about crime figures, and even throwing in this little word, allegedly raped, what it means is we don't really know they were raped. And I know it's a small point, but in New York City, they did this. It was affecting their tourism to such a great degree in the 80s and 70s. They had such a high crime rate. And a mayor came in and he reduced the crime rate to the point where New York City almost had the lowest crime rate in the nation. And I'm watching this and I'm saying, how could that possibly be? That New York is such a safe place. I've been there, and there's no way this is a safe place. And then about 1.5 years or 2 years ago, it came out with what was going on is the police were not letting people report crimes. Someone would say I was beaten up, and they'd say, well, how do you prove it? They come in there with black and blue, and they're bloody, and they're saying they were beaten up, and they go, well, you don't have any evidence. Literally. And they really would not report this crime because they were told, bring this crime rate down however you can because it's affecting our tourism. Now, the crime rate in New York did not go down, but the reported crime rate did. And the tourism then kind of started to rebound. It's like, this is a safe place now, but it wasn't any safer. So this is how evil these people are that are working this system. This is a little part of that character. And just a little teeny piece comes through with the word allegedly raped. That doesn't belong there. 2 women raped at Abelin in recent weeks. That's how that story should go. They have editors, they have writers, they're owned by a gigantic corporation, but they don't know how to write a headline accurately, and they know how to write a lie, and that's why they're in that position. So let's turn now. So you got to be aware of this when you're going in, and that's a rape. Now, how many knows how many people have been, mugged, punched, tripped, pickpocketed, for it to make the news, and that was all allegedly, according to these newspapers. Now let's go down to verse 52. Well, here in Isaiah 14. Now let's start with verse 3. Isaiah 14:3, it will come to pass in the last days that Yahweh will give you rest from your sorrow and from your terror. This is what is taking place right now. Yahweh is saying there's going to be an end to it. You say when? That's what everyone's saying. They're all saying when. Well, are you ready? Are you ready spiritually? Have you overcome everything that Yahweh wants you to? He's waiting on you, We're not waiting on him. He's waiting on you to get ready, okay? And he's only going to wait so long because the waiting on us is allowing some of this suffering to continue. Verse 4, that you will take up this proverb. Let's turn over there to Isaiah 14, verse 4. And let's go to verse 3. It will come to pass in that day that Yahweh will give you rest from your sorrow, and that's what Pastor was just talking about, and from your terror, and from the hard bondage in which you were made to serve. And this is basically the result of this schools of higher learning. This is this whole system that he's talking about that we're living in right now that's causing this whole problem. That you will take up this proverb, this taunting speech against the king of Babylon. And I've often thought that, that we're going to take up this. I just can't wait to give one of these guys a taunting proverb. We can't do anything violent against them, but we're going to take up a taunting proverb. And that's really going to get them upset. But there's a little more depth to what this verse is talking about here. It says, and you will and say, how the oppressor has ceased and the golden city has ceased. Okay, now let's go on what Pastor says here on verse 53 in the ninth book of Israel, that you will take up this proverb, this taunting speech against the kings of the east and the kings of confusion, the kings of Babylon, which are kings of confusion, that the way of the kings of the east might be fulfilled. Well, this is what it's speaking of, chapter 14, but it's speaking of this lineage that we read in Genesis 49 that is ruling this territory here. All the world right now. And say how the oppressor, okay, this is this supposedly taunting speech. A taunting speech is something like you'd see at a hockey game, where they're talking to the visiting team. So this word I think is a little bit off, but it says how you will say the oppressor has ceased. Now get that, the oppressor. Remember Genesis 10 and Revelation 17 and 18 all tie this together. How the oppressor has ceased, the golden city has ceased. And Pastor gets into this word, which is this golden city. And remember, he told us that if you look it up, and I looked it up in the interlinear, it was mistranslated by someone who got one of the Hebrew letters mixed up, but it means exactress, which is this woman who forces, it basically means to force or compel the payment, the yielding or performance of, to exact money or tribute from a conquered people. And it says this, how the oppressor has ceased. And the oppressor, if you look up that word, it's talking about a boisterous, raging behavior, a fury. And it says this is all ceased. And if you look up this word ceased, you'll see in the in Strong's that it's word number 7. Let me see if I got this right. It's word 7673a, and in the Hebrew it's Shabbat, and it's 7673b, which is the exact same spelling with the exact same vowel points, is also Shabbat. Okay, and 76b means to keep or observe the Sabbath. 7673a means to cease, desist, to rest, brought to an end, ceases, do away, eliminate. So what this verse is saying, this taunting proverb, we're not going to be sitting there saying, laughing at them and saying, look at you, you got burned up with a nuclear bomb, you should have listened to us. That what this verse is saying is, like a hockey game, we're just going to be having a great time. I've thought this in my mind at times. I've had to resist this. It's like, well, just you wait till you see how right we are. But they are going to be on our side at this point. Okay, that's what this is talking about, because it says the oppressor has rested. Okay, for the oppressor has started to keep the Sabbath. Okay, and so has stopped oppressing. Okay, so they've also, and that's why this kind of double meaning to this word, because when we start keeping the Sabbath, not only do we stop our own labor and start keeping Yahweh's laws, but we stop oppressing people. Because each one of us here was an oppressor. It's just a matter of what level of oppression we engaged in, and that really depended on who we had under us. You could be single in an apartment with a dog and oppress your dog. And a lot of people get that way. It's a matter of it's an attitude that's ceasing here, and it's ceasing because of the teaching of Yahweh's Sabbath. And this is the exact, what this verse is really saying is how the schools of Nimrod have stopped, and now they've switched over to the Sabbath. Because this is what the difference is. The world has the schools of Nimrod, the system of Nimrod. The House of Yahweh has the Sabbath. And this is talking about this change that's about to take place. And it says, he who struck, and it says that Yahweh has broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of rulers. Okay, this is what they're going to be saying. This is what we're all going to be all excited about. Because, and if you look at this where it says Yahweh has broken the staff of the wicked, it's Yahweh, but it's us. This is Israel Hawkins, this house right here is going to accomplish this prophecy that's being spoken of in Isaiah. It's a great prophecy about the house of Yahweh, because remember, Pastor is Yahweh to us, and he is the one who's going to do this work that's actually going to break this staff of the wicked. He who struck the people in wrath with a continual incessant stroke, he who ruled the nations in anger, is now persecuted, and no one hinders. And this is, of course, in other words, what it's saying is Satan is now out of power, because the people have learned the lesson that they need to learn. And then this is what we're going to all be a part of. And this is why it's so important to stay in the house of Yahweh, because this this moment is right around the corner. The whole earth is at rest, okay, and peace and quiet, and they break forth into singing. This is where we are right now in prophecy. This is the next step. We do have to go through nuclear war, but this is the next thing that's going to occur. Now, after the nuclear war. Now, I want to, Muhammad Ahmadinejad spoke before the UN, and he was pretty interesting. They kind of made fun of him, of course, and they said the minute he started to talk about 9/11, and the news reports reported it, you know, depending on how they reported it, some of them said, well, he started to talk about the conspiracy, or he started to talk about the U.S. being at fault, but he really wasn't saying that exactly. I know he's not exactly all right either, because he doesn't know what the solution is. If you don't know the prophecies that the House of Yahweh teaches, you start searching for solutions using the schools of Nimrod, and you're invariably going to end up with the result that the best thing to do is to get ourselves a nuke. You know, that's the ultimate answer in the schools of Nimrod, because you have to basically defend yourself against these people. You don't have any faith in Yahweh, and that's one way you can scare everyone, is by getting a nuke. But what Ahmadinejad said before the General Assembly, he said a bunch of things. I can almost read this whole speech. It's almost a sermon, except that he does have the words, he uses the words God, and he uses, I'm just going to read them like he has them. But he, other than that, it's a type of speech you never see in the United States from politicians, because the United States is really run by money men. And if you listen to any of the politicians' speeches, it's almost like they're speaking to a board of directors at GM. Everything's about numbers. It's about employment numbers. It's about productivity. It's about, that's all they talk about. It's like, so you just feel like saying, you know, you guys don't even know what you're talking about in the first place. And secondly, why do you have to keep bringing up these numbers over and over again? It's because they're only concerned with one thing, and it's money. But listen to this man's speech. This is Muhammad Ahmadinejad, and he says, you know, among other things, first he opens up with, thankful to Almighty God, but who knows what he's really saying, because this is a translation. But he says, after about 100 years of domination, the system of capitalism and the existing world order, okay, and this is what we're dealing with here, the existing world order, which is this Genesis 49, has proved to be unable to provide appropriate solutions to the problems of society, and thus is coming to an end. Now, isn't that a great sentence? No, it's so full of truth that he's recognizing this. I shall try to examine the two main causes of this failure and picture some features of the ideal future order. Okay, so this is how he opened up. Now, they made fun of him, but I would call this speech refreshing. You know, imagine if you saw one of these guys, Brian Williams, and he came on the evening news and he said, Muhammad Ahmadinejad gave a refreshing speech at the UN tonight. You know, people would be shocked. So they're not going to do that. They have to couch it in scary terms. You know, he got up there and everyone left, and it shows him getting up there and looking around and everyone leaving. And they never tell you what he's actually saying, because it's just like Hitler. When Hitler spoke, they would never tell you what Hitler was saying. And I'm not saying Hitler was a great man by any means, but the problem is if you listen to what Hitler was saying, he was saying the exact same things that the politicians in the United States are saying. And so that would kind of key people in to say, wait a minute, we're dealing with another Hitler here. But so they don't tell you what he's saying. They just picture him getting up there and everyone leaving because he's going to say something outrageous. But listen to this paragraph. He says, as you are well aware, and I don't know why he would say they're well aware, but it must be he knows what they're thinking about. He says the divine prophets, he said, had the mission to call everyone to monotheism, love, and justice, and show mankind the path to prosperity. They invite men to contemplation and knowledge in order to better appreciate the truth and to avoid atheism and egoism. And, you know, with these words are off, and he's obviously off, but he's saying that, you know, they invite men to contemplation, they invite men to study and knowledge in order to better appreciate the truth and avoid atheism and egoism, but really selfishness and paganism. The very nature of the message of all prophets is one and the same. Every messenger endorsed the messenger before him, which is just what the House of Yahweh says. All the prophets are of the same message, and glad tidings about the prophets to come. So they prophesied about the ones to come next. and presented a more complete version of the religion in accordance with the capacity of the man at the time. Okay, each prophet came out, there was more details about the prophecies. This continued, it says, up until the last messenger of God, he says, who presented the perfect and all-inclusive religion. I think he's talking about Yeshua Messiah, but he doesn't really know. He says, in opposition to that, the egotist, which is the person who is selfish and greedy, stood up against this clear call. Okay, and this is what's going on. They are actually standing up against this clear call of the house of Yahweh, revolting against the message. And that's what they're doing, revolting against it, persecuting it, tearing it down. Nimrod, and he says he uses Nimrod. Nimrod countered Abraham. Pharaoh countered Moses. And the greedy countered, he says, Jesus Christ. And in recent centuries, the human ethics and values have been rejected as a cause for backwardness. Okay? So in other words, what he's saying is that morality is being rejected and it's being claimed as being backward. They were portrayed even as opposing wisdom and science. Okay, so morality now is portrayed as opposing science because of earlier infliction on man, and this is a real enlightening statement here, by the proclaimers of religion in the dark ages of the West. So what he's saying is that religion has gotten a bad name because of the Catholic Church. In essence, that's what he's saying. If religion has gotten a bad name because of the Catholic Church. And all of this, and this is what he says. He says, as you are well aware at the beginning, he's keying us in, these people are quite as ignorant as you think they are. And then he starts talking religion to these money men who supposedly don't know religion. But remember who these people are. They're the scribes and the Pharisees. They've come down and they're all connected to the Catholic Church. Man's disconnection from heaven detached him from his true self. So this is the type of speech, and he goes on and he talks about what I think is really interesting. He talks about all the wars that were caused by the United States, which is supposed to be this great peacekeeper, in World War I and World War II and Vietnam and Korea and all the millions of people that have died because of this. And then he gets into the Twin Towers, which he talked about how in the Twin Towers, 3,000 people died. And he says, we're sorry about that. But look at what you've done in response to that. You've started 2 huge wars, hundreds of thousands of people. And I've read reports where they think that in Iraq, with the shock and awe attack that the United States did, within weeks of that attack, something like 400,000 Iraqis were dead. You know, and if you notice, they are not giving enemy counts, death counts of the enemy. And this is because it would shock the American people. The American people could say, what do you mean we killed 1 million people? So they're not even giving that. They're not even really giving the dead of the U.S. like they used to with the Vietnam War and with the other wars. They used to give you counts very often. But they're not giving the enemy dead because of the huge, unbelievable numbers. You cannot take the technology and the money that the United States has and mount it against a small country like Iraq and Afghanistan and not expect to get at least a 10 to 100 kill ratio. And that's probably around what they have. So you might see 50 Americans die in a month, but if you were to count the other side, it's more like 5,000. But they said they can't even count them because when they kill people over there with the weapons that the United States has, they kill the entire family, and they end up killing the entire neighborhood, and there's no one even to report the death. And then they blow up the place where they report the death, so there's no one to report the death to. And they know all of this, and so they're causing this incredible destruction, and he goes into a little bit of this. And he talks about how, there's 3 reasons why those towers were taken down. Either it was terrorists, some people say it was the U.S. government, and some people say it was something else. And he says, well, let's just take all of those 3 possibilities and break them down as to what the U.S. should have done. If it was a group of terrorists, he should have found out who they were, found out exactly who they were, done an investigation, and got them. You don't start 2 big wars about it. And this is what the United States walked out on. This is what they walked out because they want the world to think this man is just a lunatic. And he's not. It's what his problem is, he's closer to the truth than they are, a lot closer to the truth. And the Catholic Church wants to destroy him. He's not the truth. We're the house of Yahweh. But the Catholic Church wants to destroy him. It's like the other guy, Gaddafi, in Libya, and they destroyed him, and Pastor was talking about him, and it showed him one time. I'll go to these press TV and these other news places because they do tend to cover the news much better than the U.S. news. And Pastor was saying, what are they going to replace this guy with? They're going to replace him with another man, and it's going to have the same thing. They're going to have someone taking out the trash, and Libya's Gaddafi was sitting there saying, what are you going to get? Some guy with a beard? I mean, what are you expecting? And an analyst was on the radio the other day, and he said, Gaddafi is not a nut. He said, you cannot rule a country like that for 40 years if you're a nut. He said, they had a very high standard of living in Libya. And they said they're just making him look like a nut because they want to get rid of him. And this was on the regular news, on the radio anyway. I don't know how they got that out. But this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with this group who is going to mess things up so bad that they're actually, with all their pride and all of their investment they have in this system, they're going to say, this really doesn't work. It's going to get that bad. It's going to be just, their faces falling off and almost everyone they know dead. They're going to finally come to that conclusion. Let's turn over to page 280 and we'll read verse 67. If you remember, the first time we went to New York was a conference, the World Peace Conference, and we talked to Bawa Jain. I don't know what he's doing now, but at that time he was the gate opener. That's what his name meant. And he put the House of Yahweh in the UN at the time period along with all the other religions of the world. And remember, this UN, as Muhammad Ahmadinejad said, as you are well aware, the prophets, so they're religious people sitting in this UN. He put the House of Yahweh in the UN at that time period. And he told me, I visited him in his office, and he privately gave him his books, The Peaceful Solution, and so forth. And he told me, there's no way of stopping this. He said, he says, I forgot the time in the year, it was around 2000. He said at that time it was an $850 billion a year income for nuclear industry. And the difference between the year 2000 and 2011 is much greater than 11 years because we had 9/11 and that changed. Remember, it took peace from the earth. So the value of, if you were going to be an investor and you could invest in nuclear technology and you knew there was going to be a 9/11, you could have made a killing in this. In fact, you probably reverse some of these transactions and find out who knew about it. But nuclear technology is now probably worth $5 to $10 trillion, because of this huge push now, and all the nations are afraid of one another. But the money that's involved in the United States, the sixth wealthiest county, and I mean, you think of all the counties in the United States, there's hundreds of them in Texas alone. You got counties in New York City and counties in Washington, D.C. and Hollywood. The sixth wealthiest county is in New Mexico, and it's Los Alamos County. And it's because these nuclear physicists, this was in 2010, make so much money that they raise the average income of that little rural town, it's 18,000 people or so in that county, up to being the sixth highest in the country, in that one county. That's how much money these nuclear physicists make, and that's how much they're making now. Okay, so they're not disarming. They're not paying these people to disarm these weapons. They're paying these people to develop these weapons, and they've just recently came up with a way that actually makes the cost of developing or producing a nuclear weapon 1/10 what it used to be. And you can produce it in a smaller building that can be hidden underground. They do it with lasers, and General Electric is who came out with that. And if you notice, I think the main guy in GE was sitting at Barack Obama's speech recently. Everyone thinks they're making their money off of washing machines, but they're probably making more of their money off of nuclear technology because they did come out with this new way of producing, enriching uranium is what it was. Verse 71. Let's go to verse 71. He says, now this in Isaiah, he says, now this, speaking of this exactress, this is this person who basically has this system that's different than the Sabbath. It's this system of crime and punishment, this system of tricking people into buying things and forcing people to buy things to get your way. Look down to verse 9. Sheol, the grave from beneath, is excited to meet you at your coming. It stirs up the dead for you, all the chief ones of the earth. It has raised up their thrones, all the kings of the nations. That's like a scary verse to me because this is what they do. They're excited. The ones that are suffering are excited to have you suffer too. They want you to suffer, and they want you to suffer, and they want to take your stuff. at the same time. Let's go now over real quick to verse 100 on page 282. It's all shown here in the face of AIDS, the AIDS epidemic that's spreading like gangrene. So are fear, hatred, and fear. The lust for what the other nations have is bringing on wars. On the wars, the merchandising that puts everybody in depression and oppression. The people are so oppressed right now at this time, many are committing suicide. Many of the soldiers are committing suicide because of oppression. And a number to keep in mind when you think of suicide is the rate of suicide among AIDS, people who have AIDS, not who are living with AIDS, people who are dying of AIDS, is 40 times that of the average person who doesn't have AIDS. The suicide rate, now there was 2 deaths recently in the news that were of AIDS, but they didn't say they were of AIDS. So AIDS is very covered up still. The suicide rate of homosexual men is 7 times that of non-homosexual men. So when they talk about bullying, it's not the bullying that's causing this, it's their lifestyle that they're promoting, and they're actually causing these people to be suicidal. Anyway, what we're facing is much different from that what Yahweh is facing. Our job, of course, is to bring forth His message of the peaceful kingdom to all the world, and then we will start, after this is made clear, after this, they really start seeing this, that's when they're going to come here. And at verse 102, at the end of verse 101, he says, once they start seeing this, they'll start hunting you, brethren, for the rest of the lesson, okay, which is this lesson of the rest, the lesson of the Sabbath, which is this whole different system and this whole new way of doing things that's going to come about after they kill 4/5 of the earth's population. So with that time, let's say a closing prayer. We'll end the class. Father Yahweh, this is Khan's Finest, the last day's witness, Israel Hawkins, to your son, our high priest Yeshua Messiah, along with the great men of your class, and all the people who are viewing on the internet, and those who are seeing it around the world, who are seeing this message and noticing the troubles of the earth, that these troubles are just getting worse and actually insolvable. And we do have the solution, Father. We do pray, Father, that you strengthen us in this knowledge and keep us all in your house, and gather those who would come here quickly before these nuclear wars start, so that they can be among those who believe without seeing. We do pray for the pastor that you give him the full use of his subconscious mind. We do pray that you heal the sick, that you free the great Kahan Yedidia, and that you free all those who are being held back by this beastly governmental system, and that they all will have an opportunity to keep your laws, come to this feast, and spread this message and be a part of your kingdom forever. In Yeshua Messiah's name we pray. Hallelujah, Yahweh. Praise Yahweh.